Yeah, I think Mark Scheifele wants to make Team Canada at next year's Winter Olympics.
Your Locked On Jets, your daily podcast on the Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey friends, and welcome to tonight's episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. I'm your host, Harrison Lee, an avid Winnipeg Jets fan and an online blogger. You can follow me on Twitter at HLivingLoco and at LO_Winnipeg Jets. Thanks for making Locked On Jets your first listen of the day every day. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe on all of your favorite podcasting platforms and YouTube. Doing so, of course, is always free of charge and ensures you never miss another episode. Most of all, though, we just love and appreciate your support. Tonight's episode, obviously, big win against the Flyers, 5-2. And you know what? The Jets had some very interesting contributions. Mark Scheifele went absolutely ham once again. The bottom six had itself a night. And you know what? The Jets defense was actually pretty good, especially when considering not only the injuries, but the overall team structure. We'll dive into all of that. Talk about Scheifele really making a push here for Team Canada in a couple of months. And then, obviously there were some lineup changes tonight, including Chibrikov being subbed in favor of Parker Ford. How'd that work? Are the Jets going to rotate their rookies? We'll chat about that all coming right up. Before we dive into everything, though, just wanted to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Now, like I said, the Jets have won 5-2, and if you're looking at the shot clock and stuff, you might not really be overly impressed with what the Jets did. Winnipeg, quite frankly, did not generate very much offense. That was true for, I would say, a good portion of the game, but where I would actually kind of differ is I think this game showed that when you have an opponent like Philadelphia that's not really pressuring you and that's giving you time and space to work, once the Jets had an early lead, they just really didn't want to relinquish it. They had a 2-0 lead before they gave up their first goal and then immediately responded after that with a third goal. Then they added on a fourth, kind of tacked that on. They did concede one with like a goalie pulled situation towards the end of the game. But like generally speaking, at even strength, this game was just very much in Winnipeg's ball court. Right now, to be blunt, the Jets don't have as much talent to work with. We know this, right? Winnipeg is trying to do a very forechecking heavy game, one where they're going to sort of grind out these regular season wins. They don't have Sandberg. They're down Perfetti. Cole Koepke was potentially questionable for tonight, did actually play this game and looked pretty fine. But Lowry's still missing. So Winnipeg knows that they have to do things differently. They're going to try some new line combinations while they have injuries to deal with. And with all of that, I think the biggest storyline here is that the Jets just kept things very simple. Once they had a lead, they really just did not give the Flyers much of anything. And when I look at this Flyers team, I was expecting them to be fast, more aggressive, all that fun stuff, with one caveat, right? We all kind of know that when it comes to aggression and speed and skill, Rick Tocchet doesn't always go down that road. And so I sort of look at this as one of those situations where the Jets played their game to a perfect tee. Once they had a lead, they became incredibly stingy. They did not give the Flyers much room to breathe. And in the third period, it was a complete neutral zone shutdown, right? Once the Jets had that lead, they were not going to give Philadelphia any time and space to breathe. And the Flyers themselves, I thought, really backed off in the defensive zone and offensively just didn't really create that many good looks, partly because the Jets were stingy, also partly because Rick Tocchet just doesn't seem to preach the kind of hockey that I think would actually suit a roster that's built for rapid counters and rush chances. Winnipeg did still give up a couple of rush opportunities, one of which the Flyers did capitalize on, but for the most part, they really didn't have much going. So all in all, I thought this game from Winnipeg's perspective was very impressive. And for a couple of key performers we'll have to shout out here, let's just give Mark Scheifele his roses. I have a little segment dedicated to him because he's had a crazy start to his season, but he had 2 goals, one on the power play and one at even strength. Really impressive tonight. I thought, he probably should have been the first star of the game if he wasn't. And, I just came away really loving how he's played. I feel like, recently he's looked more and more like a guy who is on a mission to prove he is elite. And, if this run with him is to be believed, yeah, we have a real fun year ahead for him. Also, really want to give a huge shout out to the bottom six. I thought they played their butts off. Technically, I'm not allowed to swear on this podcast, so I can't say what I would normally say about them, but they really hauled tail and did a phenomenal job. In fact, they did so well that the third line actually played almost as much as Taves did, which, considering Taves played more than Scheifele in the last game, kind of tells you that maybe, there were some alterations here. The Taves line, I thought, really struggled. JT himself had a really bad game in general, which is going to happen, right? He's a 38-year-old center. Obviously, he's had time off. I'm actually surprised that this is the first game where he's looked behind the play. Usually, this hasn't happened to him in the first couple of starts. But tonight, yeah, it just really wasn't going his way. I don't think he would be super thrilled with his own performance, but it's going to happen, right? You're going to have games where you're on and off, and I think especially with Taves, any game where he's at least break even is a good game, right? If you're asking or expecting a lot more, especially with him playing 2C right now, I think you're going to be a little bit disappointed. I think the points will also eventually start flowing, but right now it might be a little bit of a tough sled here over the next couple of weeks. But overall, I'm not too upset. I think that this is pretty much what I expected. In fact, some ways better. And so, where he may be struggling here and there, the bottom six, I think, really picked up the slack. Nemesnikov's line with Niederreiter and, of course, you had Nyquist. They played really well. I thought they looked great out there. This was probably their best game as a brand new trio. I mean, small sample size, right? But they grinded well. They created some scoring opportunities. A lot of chaos. Probably could have added a second goal. Just really impressed with them. Morgan Barron also scoring yet another goal. This one, you could argue was technically lucky. He sort of banked it off of somebody's spine. But, I'm going to give him credit for this one. He and that line on the fourth with Ford and Koepke created lots of chaos. They really grinded out some opportunities. I thought that they did a really good job just being a pulverizing force and exactly what you would want out of a fourth line. So overall, really impressed here. Also going to give a shout out to the Jets defense. The second pairing with Pionk and Stanley wasn't amazing, but I thought Stanley probably played his most stable game of his first couple of games to start the season. The Flyers, they're not the kind of team that's going to get underneath your skin and get into those corners really quickly and sort of force you to pivot rapidly, which is where I think Logan would have issues. Here, though, he was able to use his physicality successfully and didn't really have any issues. Fleury Shen was fine. The Morrissey DeMello pairing I thought was again brilliant. So they basically just did enough. I think that's the biggest thing. They didn't have to chase the game the whole time. They basically had a lead the whole outing. And you know what? That's pretty darn good. You're on the road. You're not really sure what this Taka team is going to be like quite yet. And, given the talent disparity, where I think on paper right now, because the Jets are just not that healthy, the Flyers probably had the stronger roster, but did not have the stronger goaltending. The Jets just kind of little broed them. Really impressive from Winnipeg. I think this is the kind of game that they're going to have to get used to winning for the next few weeks. Grind it out, be stingy, don't give up opportunities, and just wear opponents down. Beat them to the puck, make them work for every single shift, and the rest will probably follow. So big win on to the Preds this weekend. 3-1 start for Winnipeg already. Not so bad given the injuries. We'll chat about Mark Scheifele's performance in particular and why he really deserves some honest to goodness amazing praise for his start to the season. We'll chat about that coming right up. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put $5 down, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. If you're somebody who loves studying the stats and finer details, this is your chance to win big. Obviously, with the season well underway, we're seeing some crazy stuff right now as I'm recording between Cincinnati and Pittsburgh. been a very topsy-turvy season. If you think you know which of these teams or any other matchup might be the one to win, this is your chance to win big. If you think that maybe Flacco on the Bengals is going to lead the revival, maybe this is your time to get in on the action, or perhaps you still have a soft spot for Lamar coming back from injury for the Ravens. No matter what, though, this is your chance to win big. FanDuel will make it super fast, safe, and secure, and payouts are lightning quick. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Hey, friends, and welcome back to this episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Everydayers, thank you so much for rejoining us in tonight's episode as we are chatting a little bit about Mark Scheifele and his start to the season. I'm just going to say it. This dude has been shot out of a cannon. I've had my criticisms for Scheifele over the years, and in many ways, when I look at some of his worst years, there were times where I sort of understood why he was playing the way he was. Scheifele is one of those players where when he's really committed and really engaged, you will get one of the best centers in the league. But if he's kind of upset and doesn't like the direction of where he thinks things are going, he does kind of play a little more passively. Now, I don't want to read too much into it, but like you could kind of tell from his body language and stuff during the end of the Paul Maurice tenure, right? Scheifele was unhappy. And like, I couldn't blame him, to be honest. I felt like in a lot of ways before Maurice left, not only Scheifele, but quite a few players were starting to tune Paul out. And that's why Paul ultimately left, right? Maurice knew that there was writing on the wall. He couldn't really make things happen the way he wanted. Overall, it just was kind of going to get to a point where, if your star players just aren't really engaged and aren't fighting for the badge anymore, it might be time to leave. Fast forward several years, and since Bones and Arneal have come in, Scheifele has really committed and felt like he's been engaged really from day one. And this year, my goodness, man, like I posted on Twitter not that long ago, I said I couldn't believe that he hasn't had a 100-point season yet. And I got some people kind of pushing back and saying, well, he hasn't even had a 90-point season yet. And like, I get that, but like, look at his individual skills. Look at how his shooting percentage has been over the last several years. Look at the skill that he displays when he's playing his best game. This guy is wired for like triple-digit points. I can't tell you why. I mean, there are some very clear things, right? Like he's got an elite release. His offensive instincts are super sharp. He's a very solid skater. His passing and vision are phenomenal. And when he's playing at his best, there's not many players that I look at out there that I feel are really better than him. When he's bought in, committed, and ready to drive at 5v5, he can be just dominant. And to start the season, I think we've really seen that version of Scheifele show up in a big way. You've heard me talk about the top line needing to show up, needing to be better, and needing to kind of do a lot of what it did last year, but even better this season, right? And apparently Scheifele got the freaking memo, man. This dude has been a player possessed. 8 points in 4 games, 5 goals, 3 assists. And sure, there was an empty netter technically in there, but like most of the points you could really argue were hard fought, hard earned, and really impressive. I thought tonight's goals, demonstrated an elite release against Ersson. The first shot on the right face-off circle just ripped through Ersson completely. And then the second was a beautiful power play goal. Great setup from Kyle Connor, by the way. Excellent puck movement, though, leading up to that moment. Really quick tiki-taka sort of passing. And then Scheifele just found himself open on the left flank and absolutely scorched one right past the goalie. So if Scheifele is going to finally break 100 points, I feel like it's this year, man. He has been, frankly, incredible to watch to start. And again, as we start facing more playoff teams down the rest of the season, maybe the points totals slow down a bit. But listen, man, if this is the kind of hockey that he wants to play for 82 games, oh, man, he's going to make Team Canada. In the past, I think there's been an argument that, Team Canada's center depth is too good, and a player like Scheifele would be more of a bench guy. Well, I'll tell you this right now. I think Scheifele has proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that he's playing more like the version that got on Team North America. We all remember Team North America being one of the most fun, exciting under 24 rosters out there, or was it maybe under 25? Whatever it was a younger team back then. And Scheifele was part of what, like the bottom six? Honestly, man, Scheifele's kind of making a case for the top nine. There aren't many players who are doing what he's doing right now. Even Connor McDavid hasn't scored as many goals as Scheifele has. Mark is just clinical. He's been setting up some phenomenal spacing plays. And so as we kind of go into December and stuff, look for Scheifele to just really go on an unholy tear. If he ends this first part of the season maybe at around 40 or 45 points, I wouldn't be shocked. Maybe even above that at this rate. I mean, he's already got 8 in 4 games, right? What's to stop him from hitting 50 or 60 by December, which is crazy to say. Not really a scoring rate that we've ever really seen him sustain. And I'm not going to sit here and say it is, but I don't know, man. I feel like this is the year that at a bare minimum, he hits like 90 to 95 points. But I don't know why, I have the suspicion he's going to hit 100 points. I've felt like he's been capable of that for many years. I've felt like the skill level's there. He's been hovering at around a point per game or slightly above a point per game in many seasons. Hasn't been able to put it together for a full year where he's able to just cut loose and be like a 90-plus point guy. But I think this is the season, man. If he's truly motivated like this and he's hungry for some true Olympic-level hockey for Team Canada, we might see the single best season from Scheifele we've ever seen. The last time that I think he was playing at a truly elite two-way level where he was just dominating every shift, it was like 2016-17. He's had really good years in between then, but I mean, I'm talking like, again, Team North America good. It's been many, many years. This version of Scheifele is hungry for more. I think he wants that Olympic gold, baby. And if he gets the call-up, you can't say he doesn't deserve it. He's fought his way. The past year has, I'm sure, been unbelievably difficult on him and his family. I don't know if there was a harder thing for me to watch as a Jets fan than to see him in that penalty box against the Stars. You just wanted the world for him. And I think in this moment right now, he's on a quest to really not only get that Olympic gold, but finally get the Jets their hardware. So, what I kind of come away from all of this is that I hope the front office is taking notice. And, pending what happens with the Jets record post-American Thanksgiving, if Winnipeg's in a really good spot, go and get this team some weapons. Get this team some real help to be a true elite contender. I don't think it's necessarily as out of reach as it currently seems. I think it'll be hard, but this team has so many great pieces and so many guys who might be ready to do something special. You've got Morrissey playing some elite hockey. Scheifele and Connor look to be playing some of the best hockey of their careers. You've got Jonathan Toews, who's a proven Stanley Cup champion, potentially being in your bottom 6 if you have an elite acquisition down the middle. I mean, there's just all these pieces to work with. Now it's time to find a couple of game changers who can take this team from being truly great in the regular season to one of those elite cup champions. I don't know if it's going to be this year. I can't say for sure, but I just feel like maybe it's time to start hoping for something special. Maybe if Chevy feels like he's got a chip on his shoulder from the last trade deadline that didn't go his way, that he's ready to come back to the table and do something really killer. So I'm very excited about that. I don't know. I'm looking forward to the season. It should be a great moment for Jets fans. If nothing else, I'll tell you what, when that news of Scheifele making Team Canada and perhaps even starting for Team Canada hits in January, it is going to be like a drug hit, man. I will be so enthused. I'm not going to root for Team Canada necessarily for obvious reasons. A lot of you will, I'm sure. But, I'm excited to see him all the same, and I hope that he has a great tournament. He really freaking deserves it. So congrats to Scheifele. Heck of a start to the season, and I really hope it continues. Now, amidst all this, of course, it's not just Scheifele and some of the stars that have been doing well. We've seen some really good individual performances from the depth players who've really had to step up, and in some cases, like tonight's game, even play elevated minutes over what you're usually used to. Well, the Jets appear to be doing some rotation, and I want to chat about that. Does it make sense? Is it the right choice? Who might we see rotated in next? We'll chat about all of that coming right up. Hockey season is officially here, and nothing beats being in the arena for those opening games. But let's be real, getting tickets can be a total headache. Waiting in queues, surprise fees, and prices that jump right before checkout, it's easy to get frustrated when all you want to do is cheer on your team. That's where Gametime comes in, the app that gives fans the advantage. It's your ultimate life hack for scoring amazing NHL tickets fast, easy, and stress-free. I've used it to pick up Ravens playoff tickets against the Chiefs a couple of years ago. Easy, safe, secure, fast ticket delivery, and I actually had a seat view, so I knew what I was paying for, right? It wasn't a blind buy. All fees were upfront, didn't have to get hit with surprise charges. It was fantastic. So take the guesswork out of buying NHL tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Hey friends, and welcome back to this episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Everydayers, thank you so much for rejoining us in tonight's closing thoughts as we are chatting a little bit about the Jets potentially doing some rotational stuff. Obviously, Winnipeg has maybe some depth challenges going forward for the next few weeks. We know that. But one thing that the Jets have kind of been doing is to maybe bring in some youth. And we've seen a rotation here with Chibrikov and Parker Ford to start the season. Now, Pearson has also kind of gotten a bump up a little bit as a result. Ford drew in tonight and ended up moving to the fourth line. Pearson was on the second line. Not a fan of that particular move, but you might as well find out if it could work. Pearson's had a good start to the season. I guess if you're going to give a vet a bit of a reward, this is the chance to do something and see if Pearson can turn back the clock a bit. I don't think it was quite as successful, but the main thing, right, is to get some of your other players some looks. You know, Ford maybe doesn't have the offensive ceiling of somebody like a Brad Lambert, but I'll tell you one thing, he is a very fun fourth liner. High energy, high physicality, and one thing that I kind of like about doing this is it gives, some kids incentive to keep performing and staying engaged. And the other thing is, you have some flexibility to experiment here. Once everyone's healthy, we'll probably see a lot of the lineup combinations go back to what they were similar to last year. So while you have this opportunity to experiment, this is your chance to see if somebody might have a little bit more in the tank. I think so far, Chibrikov has been pretty solid. He hasn't had any points yet, but I think there's been more to his game that's really stood out as generally pretty positive. Transition's been good. Passing and forechecking have been good. There's been a couple of surprises here and there in terms of his two-way play. So he looks like he belongs. Ford, high energy, great fourth liner. I think, alongside Barron and Koepke and maybe even a Gustafson type, he'd probably thrive. I mean, there's really nothing you can't really see him doing well at in terms of just being a great forechecking presence and somebody who's going to be a little bit of a pest in the corners and stuff. So that's awesome. Lambert, once Clegg, gets sent down, he's been returned to the Moose, and maybe guys start coming back here pretty shortly. I think Lambert might actually draw in at some point. I think the plan for him is to try and see if he can't bring some speed and top six offense to this team. Brad has had a very modest start, I think, to his pro career after the first season. Last year, obviously didn't go super well, and I think in general the Moose being so bad really forced the Jets to reevaluate how they handle their development at that level. Looking at this offseason and all the stuff that they did to make the Moose a real contender, I think is transformative. And for a guy like Lambert who feeds off of success and confidence, I think that's great. Show these kids success early, get them ready to go. But I think in Brad's case, I don't know how much more he can possibly do at the AHL level other than just consistently dominate, to get the NHL spot. In his case, I do wonder, right? Say you go through a couple of weeks here where you've got some injuries and a chance to rotate, maybe giving Lambert some of these games and seeing if he might be able to play alongside a Taves or whatever gives you some insight into whether or not you need to trade for somebody out wide. Brad and Chibrikov, I think, could actually be full-time NHLers here pretty soon. I'm just not sure which of them is likely to make it. I think Chibrikov has the most inside track, but if Lambert gets some time and potentially proves in this rotation that he is ready for NHL duty, it would make a lot of things very interesting heading into the March TDL. Winnipeg still probably needs a 2C upgrade, which I feel like we say that every year. The Jets have tried a lot of different stopgap solutions. Some of them have worked well. Some of them have been a little more modest. Last year, of course, Monahan came in and then signed with the Blue Jackets, and seemingly he's been doing well there. The year before last. Time's starting to blur together really quickly. But I think for Winnipeg, some of the needs are the same, but they have some internal options, and this rotation is a way for them to evaluate what they still need. Can these kids be something more, or might they find, greener pastures in a different organization? I think for the Jets, this is a great time to test it out. See what you've got. Chibrikov, I'm not sure if I necessarily agreed with benching him in this game. I didn't think he'd had a bad game, but by the same token, you also want to see what Ford can do for you. The Flyers are an opponent where being very aggressive on the forecheck might actually benefit you a lot. So, you got to get Ford some games. This is a totally fine way to do it. If you start kind of giving these guys a few games to see what they can do, see if they can maybe hack it at this level, that seems pretty fair. I really don't mind that. And I think for the Jets, giving your youth an actual opportunity to do something, to have a chance to make the team and to show the front office that they don't need to trade for somebody necessarily, I can't hate that. I think it's great. It's what I've been asking for many years. I think the Jets doing it now is, you could argue a little on the later side, but hey, better late than never. Get into good habits now. Set yourself up for success for the next couple of seasons. I really do feel at the end of the day that this year is like a transition step, right? Even if it doesn't quite work out this year, even if they have a short playoff run, but maybe they bring in some big pieces to help for next year, that would still be successful to me. Get these kids some ice time, get them acclimated to the NHL level. You're going to have a lot of contracts expiring after the season, a lot of one-year deals that are going to be up, and maybe then your kids will be ready to take the reins and kind of raise this team's ceiling. So I think with the Jets, there's a surprising amount to look forward to. No, we don't have a Schaefer or a McDavid or a McCarr sitting somewhere in the prospect pool, but I think we have a lot of guys who might be able to do some really interesting things in the right environment. So excited for that, but curious to know how you feel about this rotation stuff. Do you like it? Do you not really feel like it's working? Would you change anything with it? Drop your thoughts and comments below or at my social medias at HLivingLoco and at LO_Winnipeg Jets. Tomorrow night, we'll be back here with coverage ahead of Winnipeg versus Nashville on Saturday, as well as some Moose thoughts as they are finally back in action against Grand Rapids. We'll chat about that game on tomorrow night's episode, but for tonight's show, that's all the time that we have. Thanks for listening. Have a great night. And as always, go Jets go.